In a quiet courtroom in Atlanta, the air was heavy with tension. Reporters, lawyers, and strangers filled every seat, all waiting for a case that had captured the city's attention. At the center of it all sat a tired-looking woman in her 30s, her hands trembling as she clutched the edges of the table. This was Angela Carter, a single mother who had worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over her son's head. Her son, Marcus, was only 10 years old. Small, skinny, and soft-spoken, Marcus had always been seen as the quiet kid at school. But today, he wasn't sitting in the audience. Today, he was sitting beside his mother, at the lawyer's table. His feet barely touched the floor, but his back was straight, his eyes fierce, and in front of him sat a small pile of handwritten notes. The courtroom buzzed as people whispered, "Is that her son? What's he doing there?" The judge, a stern man with graying hair, tapped his gavel for silence. "Mrs. Carter," the judge began, "I understand you don't have an attorney present. Do you wish to proceed without one?" Angela opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Marcus stood up. His small voice echoed through the courtroom. "Your Honor, my name is Marcus Carter, and I'm my mom's lawyer today." The room erupted with gasps and murmurs. Even the bailiff's eyebrows shot up. Reporters scribbled frantically in their notepads. The judge leaned forward, clearly stunned. "Son, do you understand what you're saying?" Marcus nodded, gripping his notes tightly. "Yes, sir. I read every paper. I know every detail. My mom didn't do what they're saying, and I can prove it." His mother tugged at his sleeve, whispering, "Marcus, please sit down." But Marcus didn't move. His chin lifted. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just Angela's little boy. He was her defender. The judge paused, studying the child's determined face. Then, in a voice that shook the room, he said, "Very well. The court will hear what the boy has to say." The courtroom grew eerily silent as Marcus shuffled his papers. His hand shook slightly, but his eyes never left the judge. For a boy who had never stood in front of a crowd before, he looked astonishingly brave. Angela sat frozen, her heart pounding. She couldn't believe what was happening. She had begged the court for a lawyer, but her request had been denied because she couldn't afford one. And now, her only hope was a child she had raised. "Your Honor," Marcus began, clearing his throat, "my mom is accused of stealing money from the restaurant where she worked. But the truth is, she didn't take a single dollar. She was framed." Gasps rippled through the audience. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Framed? That's a very big word for such a young man. Explain yourself." Marcus nodded. He pointed to a stack of documents on the table. They were copies of his mother's pay stubs and schedules, things he had secretly gathered at home. "The money went missing on a night when my mom wasn't even at the restaurant. She was working her other job, cleaning offices across town. I have the time cards right here to prove it." The judge gestured for the bailiff to collect the papers. As they were passed up to the bench, Marcus continued, "I also found something else. The manager, Mr. Riley, kept changing the employee schedule. He switched people's hours, erased names, and made it look like my mom was working that night. But he messed up. He forgot to erase the electronic record. I printed it from the computer before they deleted it." A reporter dropped her pen, stunned by what she was hearing. The audience began to buzz louder until the judge's gavel slammed down again. Angela's eyes filled with tears. She had no idea Marcus had done all this. She whispered, "Baby, how did you—" Marcus squeezed her hand under the table, whispering back, "I've been watching everything, Mom. I knew you were telling the truth. I just had to prove it." The judge leaned forward, examining the documents carefully. His expression was unreadable. After a long pause, he looked at Marcus again and said, "This is highly unusual, but I must admit your evidence appears credible." For the first time, the courtroom wasn't laughing at the idea of a child lawyer. Instead, they were leaning in, eager to see what the boy would reveal next. And with that, the unbelievable trial began. The tension inside the courtroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus stood tall, though his little legs trembled beneath the table. He shuffled through another page of notes, his handwriting uneven, but his confidence growing stronger with each word. "Your Honor," he said firmly, The missing money wasn't even real cash. It was tips paid through credit cards. Only the manager had access to that system. My mom couldn't touch it even if she wanted to. The judge stroked his chin thoughtfully. Across the room, the restaurant manager, Mr. Riley, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, but Riley waved him off, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead. Angela stared at her son with wide eyes. She had always known Marcus was bright. He loved books, puzzles, and asking questions nobody else thought to ask. But this was something far beyond his age. This was courage. "Tell me, Marcus," the judge said carefully, "how do you know so much about how these systems work?" Marcus blushed slightly, lowering his voice. "Because I used to sit in the back office while my mom worked late nights. I would finish my homework there. Sometimes, when Mr. Riley wasn't paying attention, I saw him change numbers on computer. I didn't understand it at first. But then, when they blamed my mom, it all made sense." The audience erupted with murmurs. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered, "That boy's a genius." Mr. Riley slammed his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. He's just a kid. Kids make up stories." But Marcus didn't flinch. He looked Riley dead in the eyes and said, "If I'm making it up, then why do I have a copy of the transaction logs? The ones you thought you deleted." He lifted a folder, thick with printed pages, and handed it to the bailiff. The color drained from Riley's face. The judge examined the logs, his brow furrowing deeper with each page he turned. These records, they're time-stamped, and they clearly show adjustments were made after the restaurant closed. Angela covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. For the first time in months, hope flickered in her heart. Marcus leaned close to his mother and whispered, "Don't worry, Mom. I'm not stopping until everyone knows the truth." The judge set the papers down slowly and looked straight at Riley. His voice was low, but it carried through the courtroom like thunder. "Mr. Riley, do you have an explanation for this?" For a long moment, Mr. Riley sat frozen, his jaw tight, his eyes darting around the courtroom as if searching for an escape. His lawyer leaned close, whispering furiously, but Riley shoved him away. "This is outrageous." Riley barked, pointing at Marcus. "He's just a child. You can't take his word over mine. This whole thing is a circus." The judge narrowed his eyes. "Mr. Riley, this court does not care about age. It cares about facts. And so far, this child has provided more credible evidence than you." The audience burst into applause before the gavel slammed down. "Order in the court." Angela reached for Marcus's hand under the table, her fingers trembling. "Sweetheart, you don't have to keep doing this," she whispered, her voice cracking. But Marcus shook his head firmly. "Yes, I do, Mom. You've done everything for me. Now it's my turn." Taking a deep breath, he flipped to his last page of notes. "Your Honor, there's one more thing. I brought a witness." The room gasped. Even Angela turned to him in shock. "A witness? Marcus, who?" The courtroom doors opened, and in walked Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly janitor from the restaurant. Her gray hair was tucked under a scarf, and her hands clutched a purse tightly. She walked slowly to the front, her shoes clicking softly against the tile. "Mrs. Jenkins," Marcus said politely, "thank you for coming. Could you please tell the court what you saw the night the money went missing?" The old woman cleared her throat, her voice shaky but firm. "I was cleaning the back office when I saw Mr. Riley at the computer. It was after hours. He kept muttering to himself and printing receipts. When he noticed me, he slammed the drawer shut and told me to get out. I didn't think much of it then, but now I realized what he was doing." Gasps echoed again. Riley's face turned crimson. "That's a lie," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "She's making this up." But Mrs. Jenkins's eyes didn't waver. "I've been cleaning that place for 12 years. I have no reason to lie. But I do have a reason to tell the truth, because I won't stand by and watch an innocent woman go to jail for something she didn't do." The judge leaned back, his expression dark and thoughtful. He tapped the gavel once, his voice steady. "This testimony, combined with the documents provided, paints a very troubling picture, Mr. Riley. A picture of deliberate fraud." The audience roared with whispers again. Reporters scribbled frantically. "And Angela?" She covered her face, sobbing quietly, overwhelmed that her son had built a case stronger than any lawyer ever could. Marcus turned back to the judge. His small voice was clear, unwavering. Your Honor, all I ask is that you see my mom for who she really is, a hard-working, honest woman. She deserves justice. The judge nodded slowly. And she will have it. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Everyone's eyes shifted from the trembling janitor to the furious manager, then back to the small boy who had somehow turned the entire trial upside down. Mr. Riley's lawyer finally stood, his voice tight with panic. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We cannot allow a child to. But the judge cut him off sharply. What we cannot allow is injustice. Sit down, counselor. The lawyer sank into his chair, defeated. Riley's face twisted with anger. You're all fools if you believe this nonsense. That boy hacked into computer. He probably faked those logs. Marcus raised his chin, meeting Riley's glare with a calm that surprised even himself. I don't even know how to hack. I printed those records the same way anyone could, by pressing Control+P. Laughter erupted in the audience, quickly silenced by the gavel. Angela squeezed her son's hand, whispering through tears, I'm so proud of you. The judge straightened his papers, his voice steady but carrying the weight of authority. Mr. Riley, the testimony against you is overwhelming. The evidence is clear. Unless you have proof to contradict what we've heard, I see no reason to continue pretending your story holds water. For the first time, Riley's confident mask cracked. His shoulders slumped, and his voice dropped to a desperate whisper. I was under pressure. The restaurant was losing money. I thought if I shifted the blame, no one would suspect me. The room erupted in shock. Angela gasped audibly, covering her mouth. Marcus's grip on her hand tightened, his little heart racing. He had done it. He had forced the truth out. The judge's gavel came down hard. Order! Order! When silence finally returned, the judge leaned forward, his tone like iron. Mr. Riley, you're just admitted to manipulating financial records and attempting to frame an innocent woman for theft. That is fraud, obstruction, and perjury. Bailiff, take him into custody. The audience broke into cheers. Reporters scrambled to their feet, snapping photos as Riley was handcuffed and dragged away, shouting curses that no one cared to hear. Angela buried her face in her hands. Overcome with relief, tears streamed freely as she turned to her son, pulling him into her arms. You saved me, Marcus. You saved our family. Marcus hugged her back tightly. I just told the truth, Mom. That's all. But the judge wasn't finished. He looked down at the boy with something rare in his stern eyes. Respect. Young man, you may not hold a law degree, but today you upheld the very heart of justice. This court owes you gratitude. The crowd stood to its feet, clapping and cheering. And in that moment, Marcus wasn't just a little boy anymore. He was a hero. The sound of applause filled the courtroom, echoing off the high ceilings like a thunderstorm of relief. Angela held Marcus close, her tears soaking into his shirt, but her smile was brighter than it had been in months. For the first time, she felt free. The judge waited for the crowd to quiet before speaking again. His voice softened, carrying a warmth that no one expected. Mrs. Carter, the charges against you are hereby dismissed. You are free to go. Angela's knees buckled, and she nearly collapsed in her chair. Marcus steadied her, his small hands gripping her arms firmly. He looked up at her with a grin. See, Mom? I told you we could win. She laughed through her tears, hugging him so tightly he squeaked. You're unbelievable. My little boy, my lawyer. Reporters swarmed as the bailiffs escorted Riley out of the courtroom, cameras flashing like fireworks. Microphones pointed toward Angela and Marcus as questions rained down. How did you prepare, Marcus? Did you always know your mom was innocent? What's next for the boy who beat the system? Marcus clung to his mom, a little overwhelmed by the chaos. But then he straightened up, answering in his calm, clear voice. I didn't beat the system. I just told the truth. And the truth is stronger than lies. The crowd erupted in cheers once more. As they walked out of the courthouse together, the sun bathed them in golden light. Strangers gathered on the steps, applauding and calling Marcus a hero. Some shook his hand, others patted his shoulder, and one elderly man pressed a $20 bill into his palm, whispering, "For the future lawyer." Angela laughed and cried all over again, overwhelmed by the kindness. She knelt down in front of her son, cupping his face. "Marcus, no matter what anyone calls you, hero, lawyer, genius, you'll always be my little boy, and I'll always be proud of you." Marcus smiled, his eyes shining. "And I'll always protect you, Mom. That's my job." Together, they walked down the courthouse steps, hand in hand, leaving behind the shadows of false accusations. Ahead of them stretched a brighter road, a future where truth had triumphed, and a boy's courage had changed everything. Because sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they carry a notebook, stand beside their mom, and speak the truth that no one else dares to say. And that day, in a crowded courtroom, a 10-year-old boy proved to the world that even the smallest voice can deliver the loudest justice.